Hello, I'm Eric Snodgrass, and thank you for watching today's Ag Forecast brought to you by Nutrien Ag Solutions, your premier platform for real-time global insights. Well, over the weekend, we saw the emergence of our next low-pressure system that came out of Colorado and got into the panhandles of Oklahoma and Texas. It did spread some light snow across parts of Nebraska, but as we got into Kansas, over to Missouri, Illinois, Indiana, Ohio, there was several locations in here that sat under some pretty strong, what we call mesoscale bands of snowfall. Let's pause it right here and just show you one of those. You see, right along this area here, we have what's called frontogenesis. This is the creation of a front. This is where we have a low-level temperature gradient where winds are coming together, forcing the air to rise, and we can get some pretty rapid, heavy snow development right in through this area, such that we get snowfall rates of 2, 3, 4 inches an hour. And this is what makes snowfall forecasting so challenging. Well, that and the fact that in general, we tend to find that the liquid to snow ratio is about 10 to 1. So you end up getting about 10 inches of snow for every 1 inch of liquid equivalent. Now, what does that mean? Well, we may not think too much about the difference between getting a 1/10 of an inch of rain or 3/10 of an inch of rain, but when that comes to the snowfall ratio here, that's the difference between 1 and 3 inches of snow. For many of us, that's the threshold on which we have to get out and plow and move some of that snow around. So the mesoscale banding here is what makes it so challenging to provide you with any sort of a longer range snowfall forecast in terms of depth. And because I'm recording this pretty early in the morning, we don't yet have the official reports out on how much snow fell, but there are some places, like right in here in this I-70 corridor here in parts of Illinois, that really got dumped on, and that certainly stretches back over toward Kansas City and even points west of there. So here's another neat thing I want to show you about radar, a really cool lesson, a really cool trick that we can use. This is an animation right around where I live. So I'm just outside this town called Champaign, little town called Mahomet. And many of my friends were asking me last night, like, okay, when's the snow going to get here? When's it going to finally arrive? And as I animate this forward for you, I want to show you something kind of neat. You notice that early in the animation, right in through here, there seems to be a region where there is just no snow showing up, but kind of all around it we see snow, kind of like there's this donut hole in the middle. What was going on right in that area, and why did it slowly start to fill in? Well, take a look at this. You see, remember, our radar beam, as it sends out this pulse of electromagnetic waves, they come out as microwaves. Remember that because the Earth is round and the beam is angled up slightly, the beam actually travels out and up and away from the radar. Now, as it does that, as it travels out in this direction, if you have a cloud producing precipitation, snow, rain, doesn't matter, but at the surface the air is very dry, what ends up happening is that precipitation evaporates or sublimates before it hits the ground, sublimating if it's ice, okay? Now, the radar may undercut that precipitation here and not show anything, but then get into it there and then show echoes. And what that looks like on our radar is this, okay? Now remember, I'm about 60 miles away from the nearest radar over here in Champaign. And at that distance, the radar beam is probably almost getting up to be, oh gosh, about 7/10 of a mile above our heads as it scans over me here in Champaign. So what you're seeing inside of this circle in through here is where the beam is undercutting the Virga. And then with time, the snow slowly filled this in because as the snow fell into that drier layer, and here's where you can see the drier layer, here's the air temperature going up. This is the dew point temperature going up in the atmosphere. So we're looking here at a sounding. This is measured from a balloon. This air in here was very dry early in the day on Sunday. And then by the time the snow began to fall into it, it moistened it up such that our entire lower profile was saturated and the snow was really, really heavy at times. Okay, with that cool lesson kind of out of the way, let's get into your 90-second rapid update. We are still watching an area today where the upper level wave still moving through is going to give us another chance for picking up quite a bit of snowfall inside of that second circle I drew. To the south of it, flood watches are out for some very heavy rain through parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, and West Virginia. And here in the northeast, we're going to have some icing problems as well, in addition to the snow and the lake effect that's going to come in on the back side of this. Now, just to show you where we're anticipating that heavier snow region to be over the next couple of days here, this gets us out to Wednesday midday. Again, it's right into this corridor, and we'll take a closer look at what we're expecting to see in the northeast here in a few moments as well. To the south of this system, Storm Prediction Center has issued an enhanced risk, and right in through here, this I think is going to be a lot of the folks' main target area today for the greatest probability of severe weather, as in that region there's the threat for hail, strong straight line winds, and tornadoes. A 10% probability of getting a tornado within 25 miles of any given point there. So we've got pretty substantial severe risk to the south of the system as well. So if you're in that area, pay close attention today. Total precipitation, well, out of this system that's exiting here, again, this is going to be the region we're watching most carefully for the flooding threat, and all of this down here in the south will be primarily due to these individual thunderstorm clusters that come through. Notice, too, that the western United States is reloading. I'll show you those details in just a few moments, but take a look at this as we finish out our kind of rapid recap here. After the system goes through today and tomorrow, we do get a time period here in the eastern half of the United States where things do calm down. Remember, this pattern seems to be kind of on again, off again, as it's relatively unblocked across the North Pacific. So after the system comes through, day 4 through 7 shows up with a drier bias, but you do see that the West Coast is reloading here in both images from the GFS on the left and the European on the right with a deeper trough, and that's going to excite the weather patterns across the United States as we get out there kind of toward Christmas time, okay? In terms of temperatures, we do see that over the next 5 days, the cooler bias does push into this corridor here, but we do see a rebounding in those temperatures, and this is something that I think I got pretty wrong in my previous video last Thursday, and that I thought we were going to hang on to our cooler bias a little bit longer, but the European model may have had this pattern down better, and you can see the temperatures here getting between 2 and 5 degrees above average as we move out into, again, the day 5 through day 10 time period. Okay, let's talk about some of these details, and let's just start animating here our upper level winds today. The main position of our trough is here, and we can see that we have winds feeding into this coming from a subtropical branch, but also from our main polar branch. So our best upper level support is going to be for the redevelopment of a low right in through here. Meanwhile, out west, here's our next trough we're going to be contending with for the western part of the United States. We'll see them both in just a few moments. So I'm going to go right over to our high resolution model here. This is the NAM, the 3-kilometer NAM model, and let's pause it right here because this is right about the middle of the day today. So we can see with that system moving through the midsection of the country, snow from parts of Kansas, probably our heaviest snow band right here from, let's just say, Joplin, Springfield area, going right through St. Louis, following I-70, and then working its way over into parts of central Indiana, right over Indianapolis there. That's our initial corridor, our heaviest snow, with the upper level low swinging through parts of Missouri later today into this evening, bringing more snow on the backside. But remember, through the Mid-South, getting into parts of Tennessee, Kentucky, southern Indiana, southern Ohio, and West Virginia. This is the area we're going to watch out for repeated chances of very heavy rainfall today, with the severe threat pretty far to the south. So here we can see by this evening, about 7 p.m. Central Time, that will be the position of the main front. Now, as we let this move forward, you're going to start to see in the northeast some heavy snow bands setting up in through here. I've now got you out to early on Tuesday morning, and this will be where the backside is exiting Illinois, Indiana, and Ohio, the main frontal boundary passing through parts of Mississippi, finally getting into Alabama and Georgia. And we do have the risk in the northeast of not only seeing some heavy snow throughout the day on Tuesday, but also the chance for some ice, and we'll see that in a few moments. Finally, the tail end of the system passes through the parts of the southeast and gets on off to the open ocean here. And on the backside, with the colder air coming in, you can see that early Wednesday morning, a lot of lake effect snow. Okay, that gets through, and you're going to see things really calming down in the midsection of the United States and in the East Coast as things start to really focus back over here on the West Coast. And you can already see the next system coming in Wednesday morning, Wednesday afternoon, getting into Wednesday evening here in the northern half of California, but also into Oregon and Washington. Okay, with that as a setup, let's just kind of focus in on what some of these snowfall totals are going to look like here. We're going to use our high-resolution NAM to pick up on the additional snow we might see later on today, stretching from Missouri into Illinois and Indiana. So this is a very narrow corridor, and in through here we do have the potential for picking up in some locations better than 6 additional inches of snowfall. So we're going to have to be very careful in through that corridor. Getting into the northeast, this is what some of the snowfall totals look like in the northeast. You can kind of pick out the spot that you're looking at here, but what, it's going to be tricky, especially right in through this corridor, because this is what we're anticipating for potential ice accumulation. So we're going to be overrunning that warm air on a shallow trapped layer of air that's below freezing, and there's the potential for picking up here some locations better than a 1/4 inch of ice. And there is one spot I'm most concerned about right here in parts of Pennsylvania, West Virginia, and Maryland that may be able to pick up quite a bit more than that. So we need to keep a close eye out on this particular regions and the ice accumulation before that snow comes in. Quickly looking here at what we're anticipating just through the next 4 days. So this gets us out to Thursday evening on total precipitation here, kind of in the southeastern quadrant of the United States. And again, we were highlighting this area as having the potential for the heaviest rainfall. And in there might be seeing a widespread region of 2+ inches of rain. So that kind of gets us into the main corridors here with this first system that's leaving us and what it's going to be doing in terms of precip. Now, let's switch over to the European model, get a broader scale view of what's going to be happening in the coming days here. And here we go. System number 1, we've detailed that. It's out of the way. All right. High pressure moves in behind it, cooler weather behind it initially, and much of our focus goes right over to the west coast. Yeah, we'll get a little bit of lake effect snow out of this, but much of our attention, like I said, goes out to the west coast as the next system comes lashing in Thursday morning, Thursday afternoon, and Thursday evening. Now, the midsection of the country, by the time we get to Thursday evening, is going to go on a rebound in terms of temperatures. The reason why? High pressure sets up here, and the flow around it comes just like this. And look at the tight spacing of these isobars. This is going to be a pretty strong southerly wind, but with it some very warm conditions. Now, with that, by the time we get into Friday and into Saturday morning, it's mainly, again, the west coast that's taking the brunt of our next few storm systems. Where our next system might be east of the Rocky Mountains, though, comes out in parts of the southeast Saturday morning. So you can see right in through here the chances for precipitation increase, and this moves right over parts of the Carolinas and eventually out into, well, just off the coast of Florida. But you notice that I'm all the way out to next Monday, and the midsection of the country had several days here where things were not really that exciting. As we press out here, this is Christmas Eve, early in the morning on Christmas Eve, getting in now into Christmas morning. And at that particular time, the models are pretty well locked in on our next system, possibly impacting here Northern California and Oregon. But we're going to keep an eye right here in the Central Plains because there is the potential for the development of a low pressure system in that area. To show what I'm talking about here, I have the GFS at that time period over on the left and the European over here on the right. And we do notice that getting out there to around noon on Christmas Day, both models are trying to put a low pressure system in this area. The GFS much more aggressive with the precipitation here in terms of amount and type. But again, remember our GFS model is our more highly amplified model, so it's going to be producing bigger systems. But remember, we're 10 days out here in the forecast, so we're just keeping an eye out on potential holiday traffic problems. But you did see that days 4 through 7 overall things were relatively quiet if you are east of the Rocky Mountains here. Okay, what about only looking at week 2? Well, at this point, the systems that came in out west with a deeper trough in this area with the ridge building here, look at how the activity increases in the GFS ensemble and the European ensemble here in the midsection of the country. And we're going to notice that the jet stream pattern goes into that high over low pattern where the high is sitting up here and the low is there, and that is not a configuration for bringing in heavy precipitation here into the Pacific Northwest. But this is that same pattern we saw like back in spring, and you all know how active spring was. So we're going to be watching for the last week of 2019 for potentially having quite a bit of activity in the midsection of the United States. Now, what's the pattern doing? Well, before I press play, you're going to notice that the PNA and the NAO, so this would be the West Coast United States and this would be on the East Coast, both are going over into a negative index value. So that means I'm going to be watching for troughing here and troughing there as we move forward, and whenever that occurs, ridging tends to happen in the midsection of the United States. So that's what's giving us this relaxation of the pattern in the mid part of the United States, while the West Coast gets several systems coming through, and just off the East Coast things remain cool. So as we play this forward, look, by the time I get you into Wednesday, remember I told you those strong southerly winds come into the midsection of the country? Well, there that is, warming things up. As we play this one on forward, there is a little wave right in through here I'm going to be watching toward the end of the week, such that by the time it gets over into the southeast here, for our weekend, that's what blows up that system we saw here, bringing some wetter weather from parts of Alabama, getting over to the Carolinas. But what we still see here is that the pattern's going to favor more ridging in the midsection of the country with troughing here, hence the negative P&A, troughing here, and then troughing here off the coast, hence the negative North Atlantic oscillation. And as we get out longer term in the forecast, remember, this is out here, early Christmas morning. I just want to let you know, troughing here, building into a ridge over the east, this just right into the midsection of the country has me worried that after the week that's going to be off, this will be the week where we get back on again between Christmas and New Year's, okay? And as we play this one forward for the Northwest, watch it carefully here. The models are advertising this. And that high over low pattern that we see there is one that slows things down in terms of precipitation accumulation for the Northwest. And that's an area, especially Washington and Oregon, that needs more precipitation. We're in deficit so far this year. So let's take it from here and just look at temperatures before we give a bit of an international view on things. And again, this is going to be looking at the European ensemble temperature anomalies. So with the system that's moving through, here we go, getting into Tuesday afternoon and evening, now Wednesday morning. Now at that point, yeah, the colder air is really locked in, a lot of lake effect snow here, and that main frontal boundary is pushed all the way through the Gulf Coast and East Coast. But remember, it was also Wednesday that the ridge started to rebound, and look at the warmth coming back into the midsection of the country and those strong southerly winds as we finish off the week, all right? Getting into your weekend, well, we can really see that the troughing happens here off the west and off the east, and broad ridge in the midsection of the country gives us a nice rebound in temperatures. Some locations may be up to 5 to 10 degrees above average as we move into Christmas Eve and eventually into Christmas Day. Now what I'm seeing here is, you notice the big warm sector into this area. This is when we start to get that trough here building into that warm sector, and that just tells me watch out right in through here for the development of a low. Again, we're pretty far out in the forecast, but it's something I want to keep a close eye on. This is certainly a setup that could transport quite a bit of warmth and moisture north out of the Gulf of Mexico. So we'll keep a close eye on that for us, all right? But definitely a warm up in the midsection of the United States. What's helping that along is right now the polar vortex is quite strong, and it's sitting relatively close to the North Pole, just a little bit over on the Russia side of things. But when you see these winds very strong in this area, well, that tends to keep a lot of the bitterly cold air from invading and setting up shop over, well, North America or Russia at any given time. We do notice that that strong circulation is going to continue to pivot around, so this is where it sits today, such that as we get out toward day 10, it looks as though it's going to try to break off into two sections as some warmer air kind of pinches into this area. But again, we're having difficulty connecting the stratosphere and the troposphere, which means that this polar vortex disruption going on here isn't right now reflected well in what's happening with our surface temperature field. Bigger picture things. We've been talking for a long time about how the Indian Ocean dipole is fading, and take a look at the new forecast as we go from today into the end of the month of December. Remember, we had been seeing in this quarter a lot of these colors representing a lot of rising motion over this part of Africa. We'd seen these warmer colors in this area. Well, that was giving us all that sinking motion in Indonesia and Australia. What do we see? Well, you now see a much more disorganized forecast moving forward, telling me that the Indian Ocean dipole is finally releasing its death grip on things, which means my discussions are going to change over to now starting talking about the Madden-Julian oscillation a whole lot more. Because while the IOD was strong, the Madden-Julian oscillation just sat right over here in phases 1 and 2. Well, it's broken out and it's trying to get moving, and it's going to be a major factor moving forward with the forecast. Now, in the near term, several of my colleagues have been posting this on Twitter and talking about this, and this is impressive. On Tuesday of this week, when you look at Australia, nearly the entire continent here might be seeing temperatures that are going to be above 100 degrees Fahrenheit, with mainly only the coast here possibly seeing temperatures below 100. So we are still, as we're moving here into summer for Australia, seeing some extreme heat. Let's finish this up with a quick discussion about South America. What I'm showing you here is the last 30 days of precipitation anomalies. And we can see that there are pockets of eastern Brazil here encroaching on Mato Grosso where things have shown up dry. We can also see down here as we get into parts of southern Brazil and into Argentina's main growing areas that things are showing up dry as well. But this is the CPC's gauge-based data here, rain gauge-based data, and so therefore it's a bit choppy given the lack of good spatial coverage of our rain gauges down in South America. America. So let's take another view of this by going up and looking with satellite down on our Vegetation Health Index and compare it to a year ago. So these colors represent crop that doesn't look as good as it did a year ago. This is better. Now, where we've been very dry in this area, certainly the crop is showing up looking worse than it did a year ago. We cannot use the Vegetation Health Index right in through here because of the daily cloud cover that happens blocks us from seeing the plants. But you do notice to the south of it, there's several regions here that don't look quite as good as they did a year ago. But I want to point out, right in through here, getting into some of Argentina's main growing areas, stuff does look as good or in some locations better than it did a year ago. I'm thinking about Cordoba and Santa Fe, with drier conditions kind of all surrounding it. Now, we've seen this map over here on the right several times lately, and it is showing us where we're anticipating the precipitation anomalies to be over the next 15 days, and we keep favoring this corridor, okay? So that's leaving eastern Brazil growing regions on the drier side of things, and that is encroaching on Mato Grosso here. But Mato Grosso do Sul, Paraná, very, very wet. We are seeing Rio Grande do Sul and Uruguay showing up dry, but right here, over that area, I just drew that arrow. That's pretty fertile ground in parts of Argentina, and they are anticipating wetter than average conditions with drier conditions to the west near the mountains and over the south. So that's what we're looking at coming out of South America here in the near term. We're going to keep a close eye on this because as the Indian Ocean dipole dies off, the MJO is going to really control the strength of the monsoon. We'll keep you updated as often as we can here. Thank you so much. I hope you all have a great week. We'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you.